All right, on this episode of Bouts Talking Bouts, we got a big fight going August the 20th, happening on UFC Fight Pass. We have an 8-round affair coming up. Alma Ibarra and Kandi Wyatt getting out there and testing skills in the sweet science and bringing Kandi back onto the show. How's the training and everything going ahead of this one here, Kandi?
Training camp's been great, actually. I'm feeling really strong, and now we're heading into taper week, so I'm already feeling really strong. So I'm excited to see how I'm feeling after a few days of rest and recovery.
Yeah, and what kind of, I guess, techniques do you utilize for the recuperation? Because that's such a key part in the process there.
Yeah, I mean, the week of, it's just going to be a lot of just like weight control, running for weight control, stretching out, making sure none of the muscles are super tight, and just lots of shadow boxing and fine tuning, light work, light intensity.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense there. And it seems like, at least per some of the social media posts, you've been able to adapt pretty well to like the COVID kind of dynamics, just in terms of like the start and stop nature of like what's allowed with training, what's not allowed. It seems like you've been able to adapt pretty well, but I'm curious to get your insights. Has there been any level of, I guess, roadblocks that have happened, or is my characterization kind of on point and kind of just adapt to what the situation, what the circumstance is?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was any roadblocks. We kept a pretty close eye on all the restrictions that were being put into place. It was more frustration at one point with opening everything up again just to shut it back down a month or so later.
Oh, yeah.
And then open it up again and shut it back down. But yeah, once any restrictions that were put in place, we were able to accommodate and continue to train. So in the end, we were happy that we were able to continue to train.
Yeah, I'm happy
safely.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely paramount, but I'm happy to hear that, because the last time we talked, a couple years ago, a bit of a different landscape, to say the very least, so just figured I'd get the insights there. And also, I think CBC had done an article like just delving into like some of the difficulties that Calgary boxers were facing. Like, was there any point in that timeline that created a level of frustration, or was there always the confidence that like just stay the course, train, eventually some opportunity will materialize? Because I've talked to certain fighters where they were saying like, it seems like there's months of nothing going on, maybe certain level of like doubt can creep in, or certain emotions of that sort. Like, was there anything like that was going on, or were you always just confident, just stay the course, things will eventually pan out kind of thing?
Yeah, I've always kind of thought like things will eventually work out and we'll get everything sorted. And right at the beginning when it was like the hard lockdown, it was almost like a forced rest, and it just kind of, you just take the silver lining and you're like, okay, like my body is like rested and fully recovered and I'm not sore anymore, and it gave me a chance to address some not even nagging injuries, but just muscle soreness, and to get that rest and recuperation was actually a silver lining to the COVID-19 shutdowns. And then, yeah, as the course of 2020 carried on, I never had a doubt in my mind that things would get fired up again and we would continue living life.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of my mentality too, but just thought to ask because I've heard, I guess, varying perceptions from fighters there. So like the benefits of the layoff and stuff like that, has that given you like an even greater like compounded like understanding of your biochemistry? Like, it seems like you're very cerebral with your fighting methodology anyway, but did that like compound it even further and teach additional lessons there?
Yeah, it's kind of like you kind of just take a step back and you're like, okay, like now I sort of learned how to listen to my body a little bit better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, super important. Some people, listen to what their body's saying and they almost like ignore it. Like, it's like, be quiet. But, getting into some of the, fight aspects here, just wanted to, talk about the last fight there, just in the sense of, another bid for a world championship there. You got in there with, somebody who'd been in there with some, pretty high level talents like Cecilia Braekhus, Christina Hammer, Hannah Gabriels. I mean, obviously not the desired outcome per se, but is there some level of utility you get from getting in the ring and, having that kind of performance? Because a lot of people that had seen that fight thought it was like a very closely contested, parity-minded kind of fight for sure.
Yeah, that was a super competitive fight with Kaylee Reese. I was obviously not, super pumped about a loss, but like it just gave me a chance to improve. You don't improve on your skills unless you fight. So, and it reassured feelings I already had about being on the world championship stage. After that fight, I know I lost, but I did come away from that fight knowing that I belong. I belong in this pool of world championship fighters.
Yeah, and I imagine there's going to be, some lessons learned from those experiences, just in the sense of like both of those title bids, you were the away player there, and sometimes it's a bit of a interesting game to, kind of like work towards that, like judges' scorecards when you're like the away player, as it were, there. So, I mean, I imagine there was some lessons learned from that and just galvanize the resolve for whenever the next title crack will be.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you take away learning experiences from every single fight, whether it's a win or a loss. So,
yeah, definitely super important. But I wanted to kind of talk about this a bit because I was noticing a previous Dekada fight you had there. It was actually done in the 3-minute increments for the rounds there and stuff like that. And I just thought that was really cool. It seemed like that was, something you quite enjoy, to just getting to like showcase your performance over the course of like the normative 3-minute kind of increment that the men are afforded, and for some reason women aren't normatively afforded it quite as much there. So what was that like, getting to compete in the, I guess, 3-minute round increments for that one there? And I guess as an extension of that, like, was it kind of like weird in any way getting back to the 2-minute increments after, or ultimately like, oh, I've got a lot of competitive familiarity with this, it's kind of fine?
Fighting the 3-minute rounds, I loved it. I thought it was great. It gives you a little bit of a chance to slow your mind down and be a little bit more strategic of what you want to do with your punches compared to the 2-minute round. I do feel personally that the 2-minute round, it's a little bit of a sprint. So that's like the major difference there. Yeah. So, but to transition, like my one fight that I was preparing for a 3-minute round, we prepared for that in training camp. So I sort of knew what to expect going into the fight. And then when I had my bout against Kaylee Reese, we knew well ahead of time that it was going to be 10 2-minute rounds. So during training camp, that's what we were training for. So to make that adjustment from 3 to 2s wasn't an issue.
Yeah, it just strikes me as curious that that's still a thing with women's boxing. The fact that in a broad sense, there's still those like shorter round increments there. Like, I get like what needs to be done to, I guess, amend that and have the women fight in 3-minute round increments, because I find that to be very curious. It seems like just an arbitrary, strange kind of thing that they have there.
Yeah, I can't speak if this is fact, but personal opinion, I just think it was a decision made however many decades ago when women's boxing was allowed to be a thing, and it just hasn't changed. And I think for it to change, it's on us, the female fighters. We need to advocate for ourselves and say, like, tell our promoters, tell our managers, tell our coaches that we want 3-minute rounds, so that those conversations can get taken to other promoters and other managers that are also managing female fighters, and be like, all right, well, this is what my girl wants. Like, and then, yeah, so we really just need to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you do a great job of that too. Good to have certain people in your corner. Like Michael Short seems like a great individual, but also I thought it was cool that you sort of linked with like DiBella Entertainment here, because I mean, you talk about, allyship, supporting women's fighters and everything like that. I mean, just in a broad sense, they do a great job with that, but like multiple women's world championship bouts on this card. Can you kind of, I guess, talk about the affiliation with DiBella Entertainment and kind of linking up with that promotional body there?
That came to light with the Kaylee Reese fight. So yeah, we've got 2 more. We had the Kaylee Reese fight, and then we have 2 more fights with with DiBella Entertainment, which I am super excited for. DiBella does seem very dedicated to like women's boxing and really developing that sport. So I'm super excited to be working with this organization. And you mentioned Michael Short earlier. Like, Michael Short's been in my corner for the last 5 years, like since I moved down to Calgary and started my boxing career down here. So yeah, it is really great to have this solid base of support behind me as a female boxer, and a solid base of male support as well. I think that speaks volumes as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a cool confluence of like getting these new, like, broader international opportunities, but still having like the core base, like, Calgary Boxing Club and those people in the corner there. So like a grassroots kind of people that came up with you on the come up, and some newer individuals getting in the picture there. So it seems like the perfect confluence of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see what the future holds with everything, with everybody.
Yeah, and also I was noticing that Kaylee Reese is headlining this event that you're on here in a title bout, and I was seeing a previous article that was indicating that, DiBella Entertainment was looking to, like, I guess, like, have you trending in a direction towards a championship opportunity. Obviously, you can't overlook this fight here. I'm not asking you to do that necessarily, but is there some level of, I guess, excitement attached to that, like maybe looking at the machinations of that and being like, oh, maybe if we both get the desired outcomes here, there's like a run it back kind of thing, just in the sense of like the first fight being as competitive, the timelines would kind of interact smoothly. Like, what are your thoughts on all of that there?
You mean like a rematch with Kaylee, or like a world title opportunity against Jessica McCaskill?
Well, I mean, I think that just articulates it there. I was talking about the Kaylee Reese rematch, but just there would seemingly be a few different options there. So I guess to that point, do you have like a preferred, like, next option should you get the desired outcome here in your August 20th fight?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So desired outcome after August 20th. I think the next step would be to challenge Jessica McCaskill at the 147 division. As far as a rematch with Kaylee Reese, I'm totally up for it, and Kaylee Reese is a badass. I know she would be up for it as well.
Yeah, it just really articulates where you're at as far as having great options. The McCaskill fight would be an incredible one, but I want to give due credit to your opponent, Alma Ibarra, here. I mean, she's got the 8-1 overall pro record, has also contested for a world championship title. Like, what are your thoughts on just, what she brings to the table? And are you just, like, have you done a certain level of tape study on your opponent in terms of, like, what their, I guess, like, big stylistic tells and everything like that? Like, can you, I guess, talk about your opponent there?
Ibarra is going to be a tough opponent. Every opponent always is, right? So, and I've watched a little bit of tape on her. My coaches have watched a little bit more and then designed our game plan around there. But we're going into this fight not underestimating Ibarra. I know she's in my way, so I need to get her out of the way first, so she has my 100% focus. But yeah, so our game plan is just go in there, don't underestimate her, and fight hard.
Well, that's good. So there's the focus on your own individual refinement, and then, Coach Terry and Coach Roger kind of like give you the intel from the tape study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely a cool thing to see. And just this one being on UFC Fight Pass there, I think that's a good look as well. Like, what were your thoughts when you heard that you were going to be on that kind of platform, or is that kind of just inconsequential? Like, you'll just sort of fight wherever and the broadcast options are kind of inconsequential. It doesn't really factor in as much.
No, I was actually really intrigued about the UFC Fight Pass, and this actually isn't the first show that UFC Fight Pass has had. Like, not the first boxing show.
Yep.
I can't remember the exact dates, but they did have an all-female show. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 3 months ago. So it is a platform that, like, UFC Fight Pass is obviously interested in having boxing on their platform, and how can I be upset about a name like UFC being interested and willing to put women's boxing on their platform and just give us a chance to continue to grow?
Yeah, like, I was fired up to see that the card was going to be going on that platform, because I follow mixed martial arts and also boxing. So I was like, oh yeah, that'll be cool to and see Kandi on that platform there. But just in talking about some of the, I guess, like boxing crossovers into MMA, like, I mean, Clarissa Shields, Holly Holm, some of those names pop up. Arlene Blencow, also an example of an accomplished women's boxer crossing over into mixed martial arts. I'm kind of curious. I feel like I already know the answer, but would be remiss if I didn't pose it all the same. Have you ever thought about trying out MMA at any point, or is it mostly just the sweet science, put on the big gloves, the little gloves aren't really coming on, as it were?
Yeah, never once in my life have I ever considered changing. I did get that question a lot when women's MMA and UFC was starting to take off. Like Ronda Rousey did a great job of trailblazing that. Same with Holly Holm. Like
Yep.
There was a lot of women's MMA fighters that their names were in the headlines and they were being talked about. And I was getting that question a lot. But no, I fell in love with boxing when I was 10 years old and never once thought about trying anything else.
Well, I think that's cool that the passion comes through the way that it does. I guess like partly why I asked that is because it seems like in mixed martial arts there's almost like more fair opportunity for the women as opposed to like some of the stuff we were talking about before where maybe a little difficult for the women's boxers, and like some of the crossovers have kind of like verbalized that as being one of the primary reasons. But I guess that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where you were saying like the onus almost has to be on the women's boxers to like advocate and make change. So is that something that you're, I guess, focusing on in a way? Like, do you look at what you're doing through that kind of lens, like in terms of like creating like a paradigm shift so that a subsequent wave of women's boxers in coming generations can, I guess, have like a better opportunity, better playing field, as it were?
Honestly, no, I can't say that I've thought about my career in that way. I mean, it would be awesome if my career could have that kind of an impact. And like as a fighter, I do always just want to be like a positive role model for anybody up and coming, especially like youth girls that might be interested in the sport. So, but now that you bring that up, I might have to start thinking about my career in that sense. Like, how am I helping blaze the trail for the younger generation?
Yeah, I guess because I'm just looking from my outside perspective on what you're doing and just seeing where you're at. I figured there would be a lot of like local fighters that are like really taking a great deal of inspiration from that there.
I mean, I guess I hope so. Is a lot of times I don't really think about the kind of impact I'm having until like a little girl comes into the gym and is asking me all these questions about when did I start boxing and like how many fights have I had. Yeah, so I don't really think about the impact that I'm having until it's right in front of my face.
Well, it's cool to hear that there are those kind of moments. I imagine that's like hugely inspiring for you. Maybe like, I mean, obviously you're passionate about it, but maybe like have you go back in the mind a little bit and it's like maybe you remember where you were at in that sort of point in your development there. Like, I mean, like you were saying, this is something that's been on your path since you were like a younger kid and everything like that. So maybe there's like you see a little bit of yourself in them kind of thing.
Yeah, totally, for sure. Like I remember being a little kid, and then when I was a little kid, like women's boxing has already grown, especially women's professional boxing has grown exponentially since when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I looked up to Jelena Mrnjavec, and I mean, I still do look up to Jelena Mrnjavec.
Oh yeah.
But she was kind of one of the only ones, and now even since then, like there's dozens of female names for young girls to look up to. So just noticing that exponential growth in 10 to 15 years, like that's really nice to see and really like encouraging.
Absolutely. I've got a big grin on my face right now just thinking about all of that. But I want to be mindful of your time and the rest of your schedule, Kandi. So to that point, is there maybe anything you'd like to add kind of as a parting thought as we're wrapping things up here?
No, just a big thank you to all my coaches and my promoter Mike Short, DiBella Entertainment, for having me on the show. My manager Brian for dealing with everything behind the scenes, so that I don't have to focus on anything but training. And so a big thank you to all of them. big thank you to you, Dylan, for having me on the show once again. It's always nice having a chat with you. Yeah, just thank yous all around to everybody that supports me.
Yeah, well, definitely a shared sentiment. I enjoy getting to talk to you, and just, an incredible pace you put out there. So for anyone who's listening that maybe hasn't seen Kandi Wyatt perform, August 20th is a great chance. UFC Fight Pass, easily accessible platform. Alma Ibarra and Kandi Wyatt getting out there into the ring. And yeah, just to reiterate, thanks again for coming on the show and giving great insights as always. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and just, best of luck with the remainder of the preparations leading into this one.
Sweet. Thanks a lot, Dylan.